Good day, dear students. Today we are starting a short story by James Joyce, a famous English writer, and the name of the short story is Eveline. Let's see what he has written about Eveline. Okay, but before we go straight to the short story, let's get to know the author first. James Joyce is a well known writer and he is the uh, famous writer who had written Ulysses and A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, two famous novels. And you'll find that there is something more about him. He had to undergo several operations to his eyes, but in spite of that, he persisted in continuing his writing career. He was born in Dublin, Ireland, but he moved around and finally he settled in Zurich and died there. You will find that his writing is totally different from the existing English writing in the sense that the type of novels that he wrote were not just storytelling but storytelling with a difference. And it is that difference which made him really famous. And here you will find that the technique that he had used to tell the story is mainly known as stream of consciousness technique. And he wrote short stories also, but with the stream of consciousness technique, he wrote novels, especially Ulysses and A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. So, in a portrait, we'll refer to the novel A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man as a portrait. Okay. In the novel The Portrait, you will find that the storytelling progresses through the thought process of a person, of a young man called Stephen Dedalus. He is a young boy, and his earliest memory is that of a mother telling a story. Once upon a time, there was a moo cow, and a moo cow it was, and that kind of storytelling is done for really young children, especially babies, and the babies get to know, or the young kids get to know the sound of the cow as a moo cow, and this is the way it is done. And later on, you will find a lot of things done by Stephen Dedalus, and it is these memories of Stephen Dedalus that helps us to know that he is now growing up. He is a young man from a young child from a family of Dedalus, and he is to be sent to the boarding house. So the stream of consciousness method is used throughout, which again is really important rather than telling us the story that he did this, did that, and then he was at the age of 8 and things like that. That's the usual narration. He just changed that narrative technique to the impressions the person or one of the character receives in his younger age or in his grown up stage, and it is these impressions and it is through these impressions that the story progress. So here you find that how does this impression relate to the story? The narration is through the perceptions the mind receives. Whatever the mind receives as perceptions, like thoughts, feelings, and memories, they are written down, and it is that alone which makes the reading material. And we have no idea how the others react to it and things like that. But his earliest memory, or in the case of the portrait, Stephen Dedalus is the main person, and his earliest memories, that of the storytelling by his mother about the moo cow, and all these are the things that tell us, the readers, that he is a young boy, and the next perception or the thoughts or feelings expressed tell us that he is finally now a grown up person. The different stages are there. This method of narration is actually termed as stream of consciousness, and it was used by James Joyce even in his novel Ulysses, and also a portrait, which I have already told you. In spite of these great novels, he had written several short stories also. So, in between the eye operations, maybe it takes almost 14 years for the next novel to come up. But still, he persisted, and he was able to write not just novels but short stories also. Short stories will not tax your mind, or it will not take too much time, and so he had written several short stories. So, James Joyce's short stories are also important. You have one such short story to study. But before we go forth to the short story, there is one more a fact about James Joyce's writing that you have to understand. He used a technique called, again, stream of consciousness method is the mode of narration, but he used a method, something called epiphany, in his novels and short stories. Epiphany is actually a manifestation. Epiphany, we have the Feast of Epiphany on January 6th, where we celebrate the three kings coming and meeting baby Jesus. And that feast is itself is called Epiphany. And to those three kings, there was a revelation, or there was a manifestation or showing forth. The before them there is a baby in a cradle, and that too in a shed, and they are not seeing just the baby there, they are seeing the savior of the world. And it is the because of this reason the feast is called Epiphany. And that term epiphany is used by James Joyce to enhance certain aspects of his novel, or to the revelation that certain characters have in his novels. Epiphany, the term, means manifestation or showing forth. And it is from the Feast of Epiphany, which is celebrated on January 6th by Christians. And the revelation to the Magi. Magi means the three kings who had come from the far east to worship baby Jesus, and they were aware of the divinity of Christ. And so, to them, it is not just a baby, it is a divine baby, and it is that revelation. It is because of that the three kings knelt before this baby who was born in extreme poor conditions, and they just it just do not matter to them. To them, this baby represented divinity, and at the same time something more than what he is now. And that aspect is called epiphany, means manifestation or showing forth the divinity of Christ, and in this case showing forth what is there in the mind of the character. James Joyce uses epiphany in his works to enhance the role of that particular character in the narrative. As I told you earlier, in the portrait of the artist as a young man, Stephen Dedalus is the main character, and he had he uses James Joyce uses an epiphany after Stephen had grown up, and that epiphany is really important because to him, the girl before him, there is a girl who was there in the near the bridge, and he could see her, and to him she looked so very enchanting, and it is his mind process that makes it an extraordinary picture. But actually, it is an ordinary girl. But here, that enchantment is because of the manifestation or how it appeared to his mind, and it is that process which Joyce calls epiphany. And he uses that to enhance the role of that particular character in the narrative. It also means a sudden, overwhelming insight or revelation worked by a commonplace object, gesture, statement, situation, or moment. You will find all these in page 26 of your textbook. So you find that it could be a mere gesture or just an object or a statement or a situation or a moment, this which transports the person to a certain insight, and that is revealed to him by, maybe this gesture or this object is just a starting point, but there he gets an insight, and it is that which we call as epiphany. Here you find that there is indeed the story of Evelyn, which is indeed a truly Irish love story. Irish in the sense because James Joyce belongs to Ireland. And what is the peculiarity of Ireland? Ireland is one of the kingdoms, or one of the part of the UK or United Kingdom, England, Ireland, and Scotland. But the Irish people were forever fighting for their freedom, and the British refused to grant them that freedom. So you find constant fight between Irish people and the English people or the British people. Though we outsiders regard them as one unit, as English people, you'll find that there is a marked difference in culture, and even in English spoken. You will find also the same difference with Scotland and also Ireland. And you find that these are things that matters a lot to the Irish people. Evelyn is an Irish girl, and Ireland was poor, comparatively poor, uh, when compared with England. And you'll find that the people there are merely more farmers and people who lives in the marsh or the bog, and naturally a lot of water there. And in Ireland had really suffered poverty, extreme poverty, and so they are people who are hardworking. They can tame horses well, and they are very down to earth people. But at the same time, they hated this domination of the English. They really want to be out of the clutches of England. And even though James Joyce was an Irish writer, he is put in as the English writer because the English people refused to give Ireland freedom. So you can't just tell them that they are Irish, but you have to call them as English. So when you start learning English literature, you learn Irish literature and also Scottish literature, or people who had written Irish people who had written literature, and also Scottish people who had written literature. So here you find that there is indeed a love story here, but it is not to be taken merely as a love story alone. It is also the story of the country, Ireland. What happened to the country, and what is happening to the country, and whether the country should stand alone, whether she should go and join or refuse all kind of freedom and join forces with England. Irish revolutionary forces were forever in existence, and they continue their fighting. And when they are hunted down by the British soldiers, they go and hide somewhere, and they do underground work. And the spark of fighting is retained by the Irish people. And here you are getting a love story, and at the same time, you are also getting the changes that came to the country. And maybe Evelyn is telling us, or we are getting the story of Evelyn from her younger days to the present times. And also the relationship with England. In this story, James Joyce is trying to tell us how the Irish people regarded England. And there is always the fighting between the Irish people and the English people, and the Irish people are forever fighting the oppression of the English people. And that fighting spirit is always there in their blood. So even if one generation fails, the next generation takes up the fight and the next generation after that. And the fight just continues. And if you think that after so many years, why can't they abandon their fight? They won't. And even if the younger generation are not much into it, they still, those who are really for it, for free Ireland, they continue their fight, and they just cannot bear the oppression from another country, and that is from England. So, to us outsiders, the countries like England, Ireland, and Scotland are all labeled as English countries. Of course, it is. It is called the United Kingdom. But there is a difference. And the difference is that the Irish people would really like to have their own independence. They would like to live as Irish people, not as people living under the rule of the English. Okay, so naturally, they, of course, the language used in their land is English. They use also Irish brogue, that is the pronunciation. Everything is different with the Irish language, and that is also there. But even then, you find most of them good writers, and you have several Nobel Prize winners from Ireland. W.B. Yeats and James Joyce and a lot of other people, and even the famous George Bernard Shaw, the writer, the dramatist, comes from Ireland. And we have enjoyed his humor in English in England, and also the way he digs at the people and the religion, everything is there, but still we enjoy the plays of George Bernard Shaw. So here you find the story of a country which had contributed much to the development of English language and also for the popularity of the language and its literature. So here you find that Evelyn is a young girl, and she goes down the memory lane. Memory lane means she is remembering her younger days, the fields, and where she and her neighboring children used to play, and those fields are now changed. They used to have a hilarious time playing with the neighboring children, and the fields were quite empty, and they used to play there. And when it is harvesting or when it is planting time, naturally their vacation is over. They'll be sitting at home and learning something or the other. And now everything is changed. And why? Why this change? A man from Belfast bought the land, bought these fields, and he started building bright brick houses with the shining roofs. Bright brick houses with the shining roofs. There you will find a difference. You will be thinking, why? What is so remarkable about that? Uh, why not the just houses? But bright brick houses with the shining roofs is the way it attracted the attention of Evelyn, a young country girl. And to them, these are pretty houses. And with the shining roofs, that also shows that this man is trying to catch the attention of the people, and it looks quite remarkable in the otherwise damp and colorless countryside. Colorless in the sense that there is always the climate change, and you don't have much sun there. And in such places, this brightness is an added attraction. And Evelyn, as a young girl, noticed it because of the bright brick houses with the shining roofs, which is again something that she did not have. Because her house was not made of bright bricks, and nor does it have a shining roof. Maybe because of the age, it had dwindled into nothing. And so she remembered all these things that she had with her and her younger days, and how she and her brothers and her sisters used to play together in the field. At that time, when she was younger, her father used to come for them with his blackthorn stick, because the father used to call them out and stop playing and come back. It's time for you to come home. And will the children ever listen to that? No, definitely not. So he used to come for them with his blackthorn stick, a stick from the plant which is there, and the sight of the stick is enough to drive the children back home. And little Kyo, the cripple, used to keep next, warn them of her father's arrival. And the Kyo, the cripple, just couldn't play with them, but he did useful work for them. And so he kept the watch, in the sense that he will give the warning if the elders are coming, especially if a father is coming, and he will give a warning, and they will all just gather and just run helter and skelter, so that the father will never get a chance to uh, really give them a slap or even beat them. So here, the warning of Kyo the cripple made them aware that the father is coming, so they had enough time to run away from the play from the field where they are playing. All these are things that she kept in her memory, and she is now remembering it one after the other. Evelyn is grown up now. Her father was not so bad then. Her mother was dead, and her brothers and sisters all grown up. So, from the younger days when she used to run around without a care in the world, now from those days she has now returned to the present stage. She is a grown up woman now, and her father, even though he used to come for them with a blackthorn stick, he was not so bad then. But he was not so bad then, but we can read a lot in between these lines, which means that his father is worse now. Her mother was dead. That again must have intensified the process of maybe drinking that the father had. And her brothers and sisters are all grown up. They are no longer children. They are all grown up, and they have one thing or the other to do. So, all in all, Evelyn is also grown up now. Her father is now worse, mother is dead, her brothers and sisters are all grown up. And she had gone through the memory lane and had come up with the memory that she would like to keep for herself, the pleasant memories. Usually, we would like to keep the pleasant memories, and sometimes the sharpness of the unpleasant ones also hurt us, and it will be there retained in our mind. But we would rather think about the pleasant situations that we had when in our younger days. So, Evelyn is also no different. She is remembering her younger days with her brothers and the neighboring children, and how they used to have a fabulous time playing in the fields till their father came for them with a blackthorn stick. And in those days, she didn't have a care, and father was tolerable like all other fathers, and it was a happy family, which means that now it is not. Everything is changed now, and there is the fields now. They are no longer fields. They have been developed by a person from Belfast, and he started building brick houses with the bright or shining roofs. That in itself is change, and she could feel change all around her, and change for the better. But in her case, it is not change for the better. It is maybe a change which is very sad, and with the mother dead, there is no one to look after the younger brothers and sisters, and Evelyn is always there. And her father was not so bad then, she says, but which also means that father is now worse. And now there is not the innocence of the childhood. It is all grown up, and the cares of the grown up person, the troubles of the grown up people, everything is there. And this is why Evelyn is focused here by the short story writer James Joyce. And the title is also important because it is the title of a young girl, and Evelyn is given, no other name, and that also is extremely significant. And mind you, you'll have to read the short story in full. We'll deal with the rest of the story in the next class. Till then, you can read, even if I am not Even if I have not finished the short story, it doesn't stop you from reading, or it shouldn't stop you from reading the story in full. The text is with you. Read it and enjoy it. Okay. Thank you.